Hello and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is episode 10, or Mirror Mode episode 1. One of our stretch goals for our Kickstarter was to do a mirror mode where we would do an episode for each of the three co-hosts here, myself, Ross Payton, Greg Stolze, and James Wallace, as we look at our own games, hence the term mirror mode. And so for
you made it sound like yourself was Greg Stolze there for a second.
Oh yeah,
I was concerned.
You don't want that.
Yeah, I'm Ross Payton. I have not gone through the room of renunciation and become a different game designer. So we're doing Unknown Armies in this episode. We're doing the 3rd edition. In the next episode, we'll look at The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, the storytelling game from James. And finally, on episode 12, we'll be doing Base Raiders, my dungeon-powered superhero role-playing game. And then, of course, for our final episode, we'll be doing some kind of actual play. I believe we've settled on the Dueling Fops of Vendemir,
which is always fun.
Yes, which is Greg's newest game. Yeah,
And I've never played it with anybody who had a British accent, so I can't help but think Americans
a real British accent, that is.
No, not even a fake one. Not even a bullshit British accent.
Anytime I roleplay a British character, I cannot hold the accent for more than a sentence or two.
Anytime I do an accent, and I love doing accents, it just rambles all over Europe. It's... Yeah. You know, it's like, wasn't your character Italian just last scene, and now he's French, and I'm picking up German W's, and I'm like, we're playing the Dungeons and Dragons, it doesn't matter, everything is artificial.
I have a similar thing reading bedtime stories to my youngest, where any rural character is I usually try and start them off as Cornish, but by the end of the session, they'll be either Welsh or Scottish or Southern Irish or just, you can't keep the accent. Can't keep
Narnian.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yeah.
But we should dive into the game because Unknown Armies.
My baby.
A beautiful game. I played quite a few sessions of it, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Who better than the author, the creator, Greg Stolze,
the co-author,
to give us elevator pitch of Unknown Armies before we dive into the questions?
All right. Unknown Armies is a game about broken people trying to fix the world. It is set in putatively the modern era, but it is a magicalized version of reality. And it was in some ways made as an answer to Call of Cthulhu's cosmic nihilism horror, in that it is deeply humanist horror. And the idea is that the most powerful thing in the entire universe is human belief. And that's why things are so bad, because every bad thing you experience, someone thought it was a good idea and that people should be dealing with this. And so you get characters in Unknown Armies are often extremely marginal types and have difficulty dealing with normal everyday stuff because they have seen a deeper, weirder, fiercer reality. Is that a good start? We can get into
Yes.
Adepts and Avatars and the idea that the cosmos is actually a poorly run representative democracy a little later.
Yeah, so you hit upon the core reason I think I love Unknown Armies as a game so much, because it is actually fairly unique in modern horror RPGs. Modern horror is probably my single favorite genre of tabletop RPG, because you can do so much with it, and it's, there's so much gameable material out there in the real world, and most games either take the cosmic horror route, as you mentioned, through Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green, of weird cosmic baddies causing things, or some version of Christian beliefs that demons from hell are causing it. Vampire the Masquerade, literally we have Cain from the Bible being the progenitor of vampires. in which case humanity takes a back seat to these very powerful mystical beings that are inhuman. Angels, demons, Cthulhu, whatever you call it. But the tagline for Unknown Armies is "You did it." The collective you. And so that emphasis on everything is human, everything is from a human, is really interesting, really evocative. And so much of modern horror really revolves around a human focused horror. Like, it's not cosmic things, it's a ghost, it's a person, a weird sorcerer, some weirdo doing some weird occult thing. And it's bad. So
somebody who should not have power wants power and is willing to go too far to get it is a really robust framework for a lot of modern horror stories. A lot of past ones too.
A lot of stories generally. I mean, it's one of the great drivers of strong characters, interesting bad guys, interesting good guys in fiction as well. And I think it's very primal, and everyone can immediately relate to it. Even if we don't empathize with it, we understand where it comes from, because I think everyone's felt that desire for power themselves at some point. Whether by doing mad, arcane, possibly utterly violent, sexually degraded, filthy things to do it, that's another matter.
I was going to say this is particularly true of writers and creative types. I'm thinking of a quote from Anne Lamott, who said, "People say you shouldn't write to get revenge, but I would, in all sincerity, assert there is no other real reason. Every good writer I ever knew was somebody who had been, or who felt that they had been unfairly silenced in their life." And so Unknown Armies posits that the characters are people who have felt that the traditional, normal accepted routes of getting things done just aren't cutting it or aren't available to them. And so they are going to go farther. The premise is the premise that's hard baked into the beginning of 3rd edition, particularly, is there is something you have to do. You, the player group, have a collective objective. You are going to either get it or abandon it at tremendous cost. But the way things are now is intolerable to you. There's a problem you gotta fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a little bit like the George Bernard Shaw quote about, how does it go? Reasonable people accept the world as it is. Unreasonable people insist that the world must change to fit their desires. This is why all progress is made by unreasonable people.
I think we're now going into what the game does, because that group of unreasonable people in Unknown Armies is called a cabal, and that is the group of player characters. What the game does is the standard rules sort of posit... that's getting more into how the game does. The game is modern horror using a percentile system. Player characters can play people who are totally normal, may have one or two weird things, or adepts or avatars, and we'll get on what those are a little bit. And there's a whole system for running weird, occult, modern horror that is human focused. So, yeah.
And
that is
what
in a very, very brief sense. But yeah.
What I would talk about with what it does, I think Unknown Armies is a character-focused game, and I've tried very hard to make it that, especially in 3rd edition again. I want it to be interesting no matter what the characters decide, whether they succeed or fail. I want you to be so involved with your character and to understand them deeply on many levels, and their sort of, their internal psychological state is the core of the mechanics of how you do a lot of things. And so as the game changes your character changes to adapt to the game. And there is a risk that your character will get so chewed up by events. I mean, your character might just die because it's a role-playing game, and so it goes. But there's also the possibility that after you've just seen so much and suffered so much and endured so much and had so many shocks, that you lose your ability to feel anything, and your character becomes much less of the passionate, obsessed weirdo that they start as, and turns into this sort of burnt out case who's just sitting there going, well, okay, it's a ghost. It's not like I've never seen a ghost eat someone's face off before. And you kind of get paralyzed by your own emotional encumbrance. In the most recent campaign I played, my character lasted long enough to get very good at almost everything he was doing, but at the same time had undergone so much psychological trauma that he's in this terrible state, and he's just trying to get help and trying to get help, and has found this mentor that he can tell his and this is all mechanized, is here are the mechanics for how you become less of a husk. And he's trying to engage them, and there's just so much going on that it's like, no, man, you can't make therapy. You can't get away from this to go talk out your feelings. So it's really it's horrible, and I love it. It's doing what I kind of foresaw it would do.
But on the subject of how it does it specifically, or what it does, this is structurally, in many ways, it's a surprisingly conventional role-playing game. If you zoom way out and look at the structure and the GM and the players and all the rest of it, it has attributes. They are, Greg, you mentioned shocks already. They are specifically called shocks. They are not your strength, intelligence, wisdom. They are helplessness, isolation, violence, the unnatural, and self, which is a really potent combination of things to be essentially gauging yourself against when you're going up against the universe. It's a really, if I had been putting this book together, I would have made a lot more of that. It's kind of buried somewhere on page 7, the first mention that these are essentially your attributes. And then there's the notch system, which I think you could probably explain much more concisely than I can.
All right. So you have these 5 gauges that measure how messed up you are by what you've seen. And when so one of them is violence, and violence is the easy one to understand. Suppose you have a very low violence rating. It doesn't take much to shock you. If you see someone, if someone just punches you, it may incur a psychological shock that's worse than the physical shock. Whereas, a couple of years later, when your character has survived knife fights and seen people get tortured, having someone punch him is just, it doesn't even raise his blood pressure because he's become hardened to the stimulus of violence. And what this means is that when you confront violence, you are much less likely to lose your composure and be paralyzed or run away screaming. But by the same token, people can often tell when you're very, very hardened to violence because you do not react normally. And if you get too hardened to too many things, you lose your ability to passionately engage with things. One of the rules is that you have passions, which are the thing that always makes you angry, the thing that always scares you, and the thing that always brings out the best in you. And when you fail a roll involving one of these things, you can get a re-roll, or you can change your roll to make it succeed or succeed better once per session until you burn out. Once you burn out, you just can't muster the willpower to get that re-roll or roll improvement. That's the place where my character's at now. He's just been too shocked and has not been able to process all the horrors he's endured of, seeing his friends get kidnapped and seeing people die in bizarre and horrible ways and seeing his friends betray him. So he's in a bad state, which is one of the bad states that Unknown Armies can put you in. The other thing that I did with the gauges in this is that characters have identities, which are these broad areas of ability. But if you don't have an identity that covers an action you want to do, like I want to climb over this fence, or I want to punch Steve, or I want to talk my way out of this parking ticket, you have, what did I even call them? I should have looked at this. But they're based on the gauges. No, it's skills, right? Or abilities. It's got to be abilities. Yeah.
Your abilities. I'm looking at the contents right now.
Your abilities are based on your gauges, and there are good abilities that get bigger the lower your gauges are, and there are bad abilities that get higher the more shocks you've become hardened to. So again, with violence, it's like the associated positive ability with violence is connect. You can connect to people when you are not a violent person, when they feel safe with you. They will open up, they will share their inmost feelings. And the negative ability with that is struggle. So even if you have no training, if you've been through a lot of violence, you're a mean fighter. Because you will bite and kick and do what you have to do without hesitation. But people get flinchy around you because they can tell that you are semi-feral. And so I thought that was a really nice balance. And they've got all of those. All of the gauges have those linked abilities that change. And as you become a harder, tougher person, you inevitably lose ability at skills that are, or at traits that are the way normal people ordinarily deal with their problems in a, mature, rational fashion.
Yeah. The shot gauges, and as we mentioned, there are 5 of them. Helplessness, isolation, self, unnatural, and violence. When I've seen discussions that bring up Unknown Armies in various RPG message boards, discords, what have you, this is the thing that gets brought up first. Even because this is the thing people who criticize the Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green style sanity system as basically mental ablative hit points. There's got to be a better way. Well, this is the better way. And
Thank you.
If I had to name the one legacy of Unknown Armies more than anything else, it would be the shot gauges, because this has shown there is a way to represent to make game mechanic wise what mental trauma does to people, or like how it is not just a single it's not just a single number, and it has a variety of effects on people. So the shot gauges, and then matching it to your gauge system to abilities, which is an idea you've used before in A Dirty World and Better Angels.
Yep.
And I think this is the best implementation of it, because like your example with violence, it makes sense on a narrative level, and it also sort of defeats power gaming, because, I want to be a tough and badass who's really cool. Well, if you do that, you'll get to 25 hardened notches, and that's not going to be good for your character. And, well, I want to be really good at fighting. I'm not.
Or you just take an identity that's really good at fighting, but if you do that, that has to be core to who you are. And it's like, okay, why are you so good at fighting? Are you like just a boxer, an MMA guy? And how, when you define that, you have to give it features other than, I punch hard. But it is not impossible to be just a big, raw, bare knuckle boxer. Mm-hmm. But then you need other identities too. You need other things that you're about.
Yeah. And I think also like matching like struggle to, one of the gauges. One of the Ludonarrative dissident things I notice in a lot of tabletop role-playing games, characters are either spend a lot of skills and character resources to become very good at fighting, or they're absolutely harmless. And that's not reality. Like, untrained people kill each other barehanded all the time in the real world. You know?
Yes, usually by accident, because they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. Like, two guys get drunk and neither of them has had any fight training. They're both office workers, and he grabs a bottle and breaks it over the other guy's head. And guess what? That's puts the guy in the hospital or kills him.
Or you fall down some stairs, or you hit the rabbit punch spot against something hard and your neck breaks. Yeah. People are both extraordinarily durable and extraordinarily fragile, all depending on circumstance.
I remember Caleb Stokes was playtesting his zombie RPG Red Markets, and in the first draft of it, you couldn't make a skill check unless you had at least 1 point in that ability. So untrained people couldn't punch one another. And I was like, Caleb, that's not going to work. So, and like a lot of RPGs, I've read scenarios where it's like, oh, here's the serial killer, and he's got, basically ninjutsu and all these special forces training. That's why he's dangerous to the player characters. When like real serial killers are just some dude who has all those violent noshes and is So
real serial killers are people who have the cheat code of, I can find someone who will trust me. I can play on social expectations to make this person go off alone with me, and rather than kick up a fuss. I mean, right. Most serial killers are very careful about picking people who can't overpower them. You never hear about a serial killer whose victim class is bodybuilders.
Yeah, unknown armies with these gauges and these abilities, opposing abilities, really solves a lot of narrative and structural problems with modern horror or in role-playing games. So, it's very good. I mean, even if you don't like modern horror as a genre, even if you're not going to play this game, it's worth reading Unknown Armies just to see the gauges.
Stop, Ross! You're making me blush. But listeners, he's right.
He is right. It is. I'm going to be honest. I didn't find it an elegant system, but I think the results it produces are really, really interesting. There's a level of depth to them that, as you say, gets so far beyond the superficiality of sand rolls and sand points or anything like that. There is a sense of it's this human level. It's about real people who have to make sacrifices, genuine sacrifices to their self-image, because their self-image is at risk here in a way that it really isn't in many other role-playing games, if they want to succeed or if they want to progress in any way. It's a really interesting system. I would have explained it differently. I will say,
of course you would have, James.
It's in my nature. I should at this point jump in. I've been a little bit quiet up to now because my relationship with Unknown Armies is a different one. I've never played it.
And you shot it down.
I shot it down. I shot down the first edition. I was John Tynes, Greg's co-author on the first edition. Is John still involved?
Yes, John was not as deeply involved in third edition as I was. It was interesting. Should I digress? Should I go into a little Unknown Armies history here?
Yes,
by all means. It's about that. This is about the game. You digress. We'll come back to me in a moment.
I have a vivid memory of talking to John at some convention in the 90s or 2000s and, slinging back some gin and tonics and saying, man, I really feel like I just kind of hooked on with you, parasitized your inspiration, and like you did all the work and I just came in and cleaned up afterwards. And he kind of looks at me, he's like, really? Because I feel like I just handed you this uncooked pile of ingredients and you turned it into something that actually made sense together and functioned. And so this has become sort of my touchstone of a good creative pairing, is when each of you secretly thinks the other did 70% of the work. Tynes had this loose constellation of ideas. I think that avatars and adepts were in there, and some ideas for the cosmology, but I came up with a lot of the details and the mechanics in first edition. And so we did that, and it did okay. And John was the driving force behind second edition, which is the single book, and I was the driving force behind third edition. But in both the cases of second and third edition, we were all involved. And I was like, hey, John, what do you think about me doing this? And he's like, oh, that's a good idea. Have you thought about doing this? And so, yeah, there was still a back and forth.
So on the more logistical front, this was originally put together. I forget the name of the publisher. There was a publisher that I don't think. Yes, never actually produced anything, as I recall.
No, they did.
Oh, they did?
Did Noir.
Noir came out? I never saw it.
Yeah, it didn't sell very well because it had a black and white cover that, while beautifully executed, everyone saw a black and white cover and thought, oh, this is really cheap. And it's a shame. So that was I'm not going to tell tales out of school. Archon had some problems and went out of business. We'll just leave it at that.
All right.
Yeah. So at which point John was, you probably were as well, but John, I was at the time running Hogshead Publishing. John showed it to me and said, would you be interested? And I said, I didn't reject it. I said, I thought it needed another editorial pass because I wasn't happy with the way that some of it was organized. And John Nephew apparently came in at that point and went, no, we'll take it as is. And you very sensibly went with John Nephew, who is a man I have so much time for, who has made me quite a lot of money over the last 30 years by publishing Once Upon a Time. And I think absolutely the right home for the game. Hogshead very shortly after that actually went out of business by choice, nothing economic. I was burnt out after 9 years. I was completely burnt out.
Well, just think, if you'd had Unknown Armies, maybe you would have broke wide, and we would all be wearing velvet smoking jackets right now. Not you, Raj.
I am.
All right, fair. I am the Johnny come lately. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, it's the other thing, something that I've mentioned in earlier episodes, is horror, particularly modern horror, is not my taste in gaming. It's not a genre I have any particular affinity for. I can admire it. I can, the craftsmanship, the work that's gone into this, the cleverness in it. But I could not necessarily say this is a great game, because if I were to play it, I would not be getting the nuance out of it, because I wouldn't be enjoying the genre. So
if you don't like modern horror, man, current events must bug the shit out of you.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. It's, let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, everything may have changed. We may all be glowing faintly.
There we go. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, moving back to, before we get into more of the game's like character and conflict resolution mechanics, on what the game does on a broad sense, and Greg mentioned this earlier, is that it's about, you create a group of player characters, the standard, cabal. And in a session 0, you define what the group's goals are. And so the game is not like Delta Green, for example, has a very, very specific character or campaign framing device. You are Delta Green agents. You're investigating evil supernatural things and trying to stop them. In Unknown Armies, it is, here's a weird setting, and then you define, use as much or as little of it as you want, and then the player characters and GM collaboratively come up what this game is about. It is much more of a modern horror weirdness toolkit game of building, and there are campaign frames to sort of explain like what your characters could be doing, but there's no set of like, you have to, this whole game is about investigating cults and shooting cultists and blowing up monsters, or this, or being a vampire, or being that. It is, very much, if you like this weirdness, here's how to play a game where your characters are immersed in it. But I feel like that's an important note to make, because
you can see the ways in which it was done by people who'd done a lot of work on Delta Green and were ready to do something that was very different from Delta Green while still being modern horror. The mission structure of Delta Green is one of its primary strengths in play, is that everyone jumps in knowing that, okay, we are going to be told to go to this distant place and confront terrible, uncomfortable, unpleasant things, and we'll do it because that's Delta Green. Whereas, and that's great, but it's not the only way to do things. And Delta Green is essentially conservative in the sense that you are trying to prevent things from happening. There is no proactive Delta Green scenario. It's always, okay, we are trying to take this bad situation and stop it from getting worse and repair the badness. You never make anything better as Delta Green. And Unknown Armies, the premise is you want to change things. You are the cultist. You are the outside force that is saying, no, I won't accept this status quo. Fuck you. And so this can be hard for GMs because the players have a lot of agency. And I've tried to really emphasize that in 3rd edition too, is that, in Delta Green, the players are going to engage with the story because the premise of it is so firm that you really can't uncouple yourself. And Unknown Armies does the opposite, which is saying, okay, you have to want something really badly. Figure out what it is, and the whole game will be about that.
Yeah. As examples, Caleb Stokes, tried to run a campaign which fell apart because of real life scheduling reasons, but we ran three or four sessions of it. And the session 0 goal turned out to be, all right, we all live in this one part of Kansas City. We want to create a mystic barrier around this 20 block area of Kansas City and pull it into another space. So we want to secede from reality. And so we're gonna just pull it all out, and that's going to be it. And so it was about setting these barriers, setting the groundwork for this grand ritual to secede from reality. And I ran a campaign that was a mystic treasure hunt where the player characters eventually summoned a riverboat piloted by the ghost of Mark Twain to go up the Mississippi to find a secret Aztec treasure buried by a pirate.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah. And so it's very much, because I was reading about like real life treasure hunts and how weird and mystical and occult they get, and so I was inspired by that. It's what you make of it. It's which is both a great strength if you have great ideas, but like it's it can be daunting for some GMs, for some groups to tackle, because there's no like frame to, here's the thing you do, a monster of the week.
I've tried so hard to help GMs with that in 3rd edition, but the thing that we got with the first 2 editions was first edition, people were like, this is a great setting, what am I supposed to do with it? And we're like, you just do stuff and have things happen. And so then for 2nd edition, John's like, okay, we're going to have these campaign frameworks, and this is going to, say what and everyone will know and we'll get on the same page. And those worked better than 1st edition. But for 3rd, I was like, what if we just trust the players even more and say, okay, we are going to trust you to be grown-up adults who don't have to have the GM pre-chew the goals of the campaign for you. You can decide them. And instead of the GM being this tyrant, you can all get along well in democracy. Because if we've learned anything, it's that democracy works, it functions, and that everyone can find a compromise that works out okay. That's what we've learned. We've learned that.
We have. It's a very large chunk. I mean, the second book, third edition, comes in 3 books. I don't think we've said that yet. The second book is the GM's book, and it launches in. The first thing you get, here's some GM advice. And then the first half of the book is just solid GM advice. The GM advice just does not stop. It continues even when they're talking about structural stuff. I was genuinely surprised just how much GM advice there is in there. And it is very much on the let your players take the lead, let your players dictate kind of what they want to do, what direction they want, what shape they want the campaign to be, what they want their characters to do, and then react to that. And it reminded me it's interesting you were saying the reaction you had to first edition, because I think that was partly my reaction as well. And I likened it to Over the Edge, which is another game that I absolutely love. I think all the elements, all the ingredients are absolutely fascinating. And you stick it in the oven and it never quite bakes into anything. I had a long time trying to write adventures for Over the Edge and it never quite came together. And I think first edition had that problem. Third edition is much more, make this the player's problem. Show them some things, let them decide what they want to do, and then here is the toolkit for interesting ways that you can react to that and make their lives difficult and interesting. And I think it works. I think it works really well.
Thank you.
I think it's a very interesting. I prefer this approach, to be honest, to the Powered by the Apocalypse thing, which I found. We go back and listen to it again, Ludonarrative Dissidents fans. I found it too mechanical. I found it dry, which I know isn't a reaction that many people have. But this is, I would say, probably about the same level of mechanics, but it just feels more human, more character-based.
I think this is a little more complex than Powered by the Apocalypse, but I mean, certainly they're not massively different in terms of complexity. But that's, I think, a good segue to get into how the game does what it does.
Yes.
We kind of started with the shot gauges.
Sorry, I got ahead of things.
No,
I'm so excited by it.
Yeah, the shot gauges are
You're sorry, and you should be sorry, James.
I'm British. I'm sorry for everything.
So we have talked about the shot gauges. We also talk about the... so there's also the passions, which you mentioned earlier, which are in the game called Rage, Noble, and Fear. And then the instead of having skills, you have identities, which are another core character mechanic. So I feel like we should talk about identities first, because that's sort of like, aside from your gauges, which give you your every character has like the connect and struggle abilities.
Yes, there are 10 standard abilities that everyone can do, but they never get really, really good. You can put a lot more points into an identity, and most identities substitute for one of those abilities.
Yeah, have we explained exactly what an identity is?
An identity is a stat that it's measured in a percentage rating, and it is something that is key to who you are. So if I was statting up Greg Stolze as an Unknown Armies character, it would be, I am a writer. And that is, my identity, and you all can debate how many percentiles I would have in it. But it would probably substitute for the ability for status, which is the ability to make money and sort of get along, your position in society, how many people you know and how much they like you and how easily you can find someone who'll do you a favor. I would probably give it the unique trait of you can make products that people enjoy. And, and some third thing, you can set your identities up to protect your gauges so that, as a horror writer, I probably wouldn't actually do this because I don't actually believe my horror writing has made me more able to deal with gross trauma. But you could make a case that, okay, yeah, because so-and-so is a horror writer, if he sees violent stuff, he can resist that by just mentally telling himself, no, this is just grist for the mill. This is, I knew these things happened. Or you could take, I'm trying to think of some of the good examples. You could have an identity of, I am a devout Christian, and in some ways it protects you and it gives you social status, and it allows you to connect with people. Or you could set it up as, I am a devout asshole Christian, and now it substitutes for status, but it gives me the ability to attack people's personalities when I feel that they are sinners. And it gives me the ability to make people feel small. And so you can set identities up to do a lot of different stuff.
In book one, you actually have a very good section of example identities. And like one of them is quiet. Like, I'm quiet. Of course, I can be around people who normally freak out at strangers, get close to wildlife, avoid being overheard. Substitutes for secrecy. Feature. Substitutes for notice. Feature. Resist challenges to isolation. So,
there you get someone who is okay being alone more than most people are okay being alone. One of the things that people seem to like about identities is the "of course I can" aspect. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of games will set up these very specific skills, and there's a whole bunch of them, and unless you have that skill, you can't do something, and unless something is classified as being under a skill, I mean, it's like, if you were a great truck driver but didn't have the mechanic skill, some games would not let you roll to change a tire. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Of course a truck driver can change a tire. And so it gives you to fit you into the identity and explain it to the GM and others. There's this section of, well, because I'm this, of course I can do these things. So, for the character I'm playing now, or was playing in the game, the Unknown Armies game that I was most recently in, had a character who was an ex-rock star. So it's, of course I can get backstage. Of course I know where to find a Coke dealer.
Yeah. I really like this because I feel like this is like the difference between like a journeyman game designer and like an experienced game designer is to design a game. The journeyman designs a game as they think it should be played and with the very specific skills. Of course, that person thinks, well, yeah. But the master, the veteran game designer, designs games as people actually play them. And like, I just have an example. I'm running currently a Heart the City Beneath campaign, which is a beautiful and a very interesting game. I kind of wish we had voted on it for our listeners had voted for it. But
which one is this?
A Heart the City Beneath, and it's from a great game designer, Grant Howitt. The sort of sequel side game to Spire.
Okay.
And the thing but their skill list is very minimal. There's only like 10 skills in it. But I've had the devil of a time because they have a hunt and a kill skill. And kill is the combat skill, but then hunt, like one of my player characters plays a character who started with hunt and not kill. And so when fight comes out, I'm going to shoot the thing with my bow. It's like, okay, well, roll kill. Well, I don't have kill. Okay, you're playing a hunter with a bow, but you don't have the combat skill. Like,
yeah.
I just say, okay, you can roll hunt. Like it was a very odd choice to have a very specific skill, hunt, track down someone or something that's trying to get away from you, and kill in the lives of people and things with your weapons or bare hands. And so like, sort of a rare miss in that. And so I feel I really like identities because then player characters they can build the kind of character they envision in their head. And not have to like pick, from 50 skills or 20 skills or even 10 skills if they don't feel like those match with what their character is doing.
Well, and it also means that one person's I am a gym rat can be very different from another person's I am a gym rat. And I think that's a feature more than a bug.
Yeah. Yeah. So I quite like that. And
thank you.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, a lot of the times I've actually run more one shots of Unknown Armies than campaigns, and so I've used and kind of one of the you kind of hide the easy character creation method, the Lonely Hearts Club version, which I wound up using way more than I've only done the campaign proper thing once.
Well, that's because I want people to do the campaign, but you know the old Italian saying, wish in one hand, shit in the other, see which fills up first.
But yeah, I have so many ideas for one shots. I'm never gonna get them done if I don't we just got to get it done.
Well, you can do one shots too. The long campaign that I was recently in started out with the GM saying, "Oh no, we're not doing the 3rd edition style character generation. You're all just in this small town, Canadian town, and your goal is to figure out what's going on with the arson." And we're like, okay. And that worked okay too.
Yeah. So, Russ, how does it work as a one shot? Because it reads very much like a campaign style game, as if the mechanics and all of the character stuff is only really going to play out over multiple sessions. And a lot of the writing, the GM advice, is assuming a multiple session game. It didn't feel to me like a game that would necessarily work well for one shots. How does it go?
I mean, in my experience, it handles beautifully because again, you can and also another thing about the setting is I ignore quite a bit of the setting in my one shot because it's a one shot. It's a very focused game. Any given role playing game, you're going to ignore a certain percentage of the rules. So a lot of the stuff about relationships and characters, and obviously the goal mechanics, those go. But I've been able to craft one thing that that has happened is we've done one shots, but with reoccurring characters. So when I get a new idea, people use the same characters. So it's kind of a campaign, and that's where
it's a stealth campaign, a backdoor campaign.
So on role playing public radio, RPP or actual play, I think one of the best in terms of the role playing games I've ever run was a game called Ghosts and Coffee.
Just
2 players, and it's about going to the premise is the characters hear a rumor about a diner that if you go to and you're the only one in there, then you can just think of a person, and that person will come and have a meal with you, and that person can be alive or dead, and they'll have to be truthful when they talk to you. And
it's heart-wrenching. I strongly recommend that podcast. I listened to that and I'm like, oh man, it's an honor to have been part of making this possible.
Yeah. And those same characters have been in other one-shots, but it runs really beautifully as a one-shot because it's once you sort of know the system well enough to run it. Again, it's a percentile system. It's very easy for characters for players to pick up, in my experience, especially if they played Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, or some other percentile system. Everything just kind of clicks. And so if you look at the Lonely Hearts, the Lonely Single, sorry, I keep saying Lonely Hearts. It's page 53 on book 1, and it just gives you like an 11-point list of things to do to make a character. So I can make a character in 15 minutes if I have an idea, because it's just come up with your passions, make some identities, and
set your gauges,
set your notches.
And I think part of the reason that it, despite being designed towards campaign play, I do think that it works well for limited stories or one shots because it's character focused and the rules support that, so that when you get this character, you immediately know, okay, I can just look down his gauges, and this is someone who was very lonely throughout most of their life and has endured some terrible helplessness, but has still managed to maintain their integrity and that's before you even hit the identities. So when you get a character in this, it's like being prepared for a role in a play or a film. It's like, I like to think that I have built-in support for the kind of actor-like inhabiting of a role.
After the identities, there are the passions, and I kind of want to talk about the basic dice rolling mechanic, because I think the passions are a good way to segue into that, because you have 3 passions: rage, noble, and fear. Each one, once per session, I believe, you can say, this evokes my rage. I hate bullies. I see a person getting bullied. I'm going to punch the bully. I rolled a 91. I'm going to invoke my passion to flip-flop it to a 19, and thus I would succeed. Is that a fair
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
Or you could say, I rolled a 99, I'm going to re-roll it. So you can either flip-flop it or re-roll it, but only once per session. Each character, per passion. Each character also has an obsession. So there's something that you just cannot stop thinking about, and it occupies you. And you attach that to one identity. And any roll you make with that identity, you can flip-flop. And that's not limited. So that makes one of your identities really much, much drastically more likely to succeed.
And so there are several mechanics in the game to let you flip-flop or re-roll. And in terms of opposed rolls, it's a percentile system. It uses the blackjack system, like Delta Green. Highest that doesn't go over wins in an opposed roll. And that's the very basic. Now, of course, there are more complex systems. Combat uses the wound system, which...
But players don't need to worry about that, because...
Players don't need to worry about it. That's true. Players never know how many wounds their character has. You know that you start with 50 unless you have an identity that gives you more wounds. But all attacks are described narratively. And so I find that really is quite important and quite effective at making people react realistically. When you tell someone, oh yeah, he's grabbed your arm and yanked it so hard that something went pop and it hurts, and now it hurts every time you open or close your elbow. That is much more evocative than, oh, you've taken 5 points of damage, my friend. Yeah. Obviously, modern horror combat is going to probably come up sooner or later. Not necessarily, but it is certainly a want to. And there is a bit of writing. I believe you also had it in second edition.
I think it goes all the way back to first, doesn't it?
First edition.
Maybe it's just second. Maybe it was second. But yeah, this is...
I first encountered second edition, but that was the first edition I had access to.
Tynes wrote the intro to the combat section, and yeah, everybody loves it. If you want to read it, you should read it.
It comes up frequently in RPG discussions, almost as much as shot gauges, maybe even more, because when people talk about combat and role-playing games, people are like, well, if you want to think about combat as a game designer, you should read this to make you rethink it. Somewhere out there is someone who had loving parents, watched clouds on a summer's day, fell in love, lost a friend, is kind to small animals, and knows how to say please and thank you. And yet somehow the two of you are going to end up in a dirty little room with one knife between you, and you are going to have to kill that human being. And so that it's very evocative. And
Tynes being Tynes.
Yeah. And that's the first thing. And then the next section is 6 ways to stop a fight. So again, emphasizing that combat is extremely dangerous in this system.
That's by design. One of the things I set up is that if you roll an 01 while you are attacking someone with a knife or a gun or some kind of what would be classified as a deadly weapon, if you roll an 01, you just kill the person. And if they attack you with one and they roll an 01, they just kill you. And so when guns and knives come out, it is real in a way that I think a lot of action movie infused systems are not. And I've seen this happen there in the very first playtest, not the first session, but the first playtest campaign for 3rd edition. There was a scene where one of the characters has an argument with his estranged father-in-law in a parking lot. And the next thing you know, he's swinging a shovel at his father-in-law, who being a dirtbag, pulls out a knife. They are waving these at each other. He rolls an 01, and I'm like, you just killed your father-in-law. He's like, oh. I'm like, yeah. He's just lying there dead in the parking lot. What you doing with the body? Because his eyes are wide open. A fly just landed on the part, and he doesn't blink. He's dead. You killed him. And it was an intense role-playing experience. And, him enlisting his friend, the bent cop, to help him eliminate the body was extremely gritty, and it was a satisfying session all around. And I had this happen in a one shot I ran at a convention where, these guys have piled out of their car and surrounded this woman that they've been told to investigate, and she's yelling at them that she'll never give them what they want, and they're all being real tough and intimidating. I'm like, okay, she's just gonna swing at you with that tire iron, and seeing their faces when the 01 comes up, and I'm like, wow, she just hit this dude in the head and he's down. And they're like, we get in the car and drive away. And I'm like, horror achieved.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Good times. Good times.
Very good times.
Makes GMing all worth it.
Yeah, I've not done a lot of combat in this system. I've tried to run games where that is not the point. So I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've run a lot of sessions.
You're missing out on some of the fun.
That's true.
I, of course, have even less experience. So I want to ask how much of given how little time combat actually takes up, in terms of pages of the rule book, and this is a given for role-playing games generally, if there is magic in a role-playing game, it will take up a huge amount of the rules, usually with spell lists. And it does seem, to a casual reader, and certainly as I was reading first edition, my feeling was, this is the flip side of Ars Magica, a game I believe you hadn't read at the time, Greg.
I don't think I had. I'd maybe played it once or twice, but not read it.
Yeah, but Ars Magica is all about the magic. It's all about how the magic is created and all the rest of that. And certainly reading 20 years ago, Unknown Armies, it felt like the flip side of that. It felt like, from the way it was presented, that magic was at the heart of it. This down and dirty emphasis on the dirty magic system, where you can take anything that you're obsessed by and make it the focus of your own magic.
That you can,
which is it's brilliant. It's creative. It's often very funny. How much is the game intended to center on that? Because
it can vary a lot. So most groups will have an adept or two. And the way magic works in Unknown Armies, we talked about how every character is obsessed with something. Mm-hmm. In Unknown Armies, if you get obsessed with something deeply enough and in a way that is counter to how most people regard it, you can break reality. You can, yell at the entire cosmos. No, I'm right and you're wrong and you're going to get out of my way. Guns are not tools for killing people. Guns are the essential implements by which we navigate the borderline between the individual and society. And that's Fulminaturges, who are gun magicians who lose their powers if they shoot people. You've got these, one of the ones I wrote up for third edition was the Cameraturges, who are obsessed with film images and believe that these portray and control reality in a way that digital can't, that digital images are inherently untrue, and images are inherently reveal true wisdom. And so if you are obsessed with image or cameras, you can become a cameraturge, and now it's like, okay, I've taken this picture of someone, and I'm going to tear the picture in half, and they will get terrible wounds on their body where the tear is. Or I've taken a pictures of someone, and I can develop it in a way that I will see their aura and their mood in real time. Every time I look at that picture, I'll know what's happening with them. And so these are the kinds of magics that Unknown Armies adepts do. But the price is pretty high. To cast a spell, you need, basically you'd call it mana or your vis or whatever. You need charges. And for little magics, you use little charges. And for big magics, you use significant charges. And for world-changing incredible magics, you have to get major charges. And, little charges are easy to get. Medium charges, kind of a hassle. Major charges, you get one or two of those in your life. If that.
Yeah.
Moreover, your behavior is extremely constrained. Every magic system has a taboo, something you cannot do. So with the gun mages, it's you can't actually shoot people. You can threaten. You can use magic to make them believe they've been shot. You can, use your magic to make you appealing and seem powerful, but you can't just shoot a guy. And if you do that, all your magic drains away. You have to start again, laboriously building up your charges. So that is how magic works in Unknown Armies, or how being an adept works. The other path to mystical power is being an avatar, which is in simpler mechanics, but more involved with the setting. So we'll get into that if you guys want to get into the metaphysics of Unknown Armies.
I do want to talk about adepts a bit because I really do like the charge system because the charge system encourages role playing in specific ways. There are prompts for play that are initiated by the player for the most part because the player's like, I need to do this thing in order to get a charge, which is what I want, in order to do the cool thing I want to pull off. And it also, and so what players do is the tendency is to think of your character and then, my character, I'm going to set my character's life up in such a way that I can get charges easily. And then you're like, well, that's just role playing. You're playing obsessive adept. You've put your entire life around this weird school of magic.
You've fallen into the trap.
You've fallen into the trap, exactly. I'm going to be an agromancer. I'm going to have a farm. Yeah, well, that's the system working as intended. You didn't min-max your way out of it. Charges.
I'm really happy with agromancers, can I just say? I'm did I find a way to make farming cool? Damn.
Yeah. That was actually one of the player characters in Caleb's campaign was an agromancer. That became a whole thing, is that he had a farm right outside of town. And, he's like, well, I'm going to go kill a chicken. So I can cast a spell,
Agromancers are all about taking control of nature. And, the way they charge up is, you must raise an animal and then slaughter it. And, to get a bigger charge, you have to, it's got to be like a big animal. And to get a major, I think the dark way to get major charges is they can do human sacrifice.
Yeah, that Wicker Man shit.
Yep.
I played a Cinemancer. I love that too. And one thing about getting charges is you cannot use magic to do the activity. So which is important, especially for the major charges. I actually, in the campaign I ran, I had the player characters help an NPC Cinemancer try to get a major charge. And this NPC Cinemancer was wealthy and was making a movie in the campaign. And what he was trying to do so the major charge is none of these tropes and cliches ever happen in real life. Yet if the Cinemancer can get people to act out one of these without knowing it's a cliche, she can get a major charge. This must be planned by the Cinemancer, and those involved cannot be in on it, but the Cinemancer can spend as much time and effort as possible to encourage people to act it out. So basically, the player characters had to help the Cinemancer do a meet cute. Two people fall in love while they're working on this movie that he's making, and then he had to get a burned out Hollywood, a big city person, rekindle their love of life by helping these small town people. And they couldn't use magic to do it. And so
fantastic.
That worked really well. And it drove several sessions of play. And the player characters later figured out that the Cinemancer used the major charge to make Guillermo del Toro's Mountains of Madness a real movie.
Let's be frank. Who among us wouldn't do that if we had the magical power to do it?
Well, they also found a person who's like, do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? And no one knew who that person was. And all they could figure out that was the Cinemancer's enemy, who he really hated. And now he just destroyed their identity so that no one could ever know who that person was.
Wow.
So, maybe it was a twofer or something. But I really like how it encourages the player characters to initiate action. And also the spells themselves are really interesting. Like a minor charge for the Cinemancer is the banana peel gag. Spend a charge, throw a banana, and then a person will slip on it. Or stock wardrobe, put on hospital scrubs, and then you can go into any hospital and people will just believe you. So, or my favorite, I think the single favorite one is, does this smell like chloroform? Put a rag over a person's mouth and then cause them to pass out and not actually kill them, which is what doing that in real life would probably do. It's really cool and really fun, and creates a lot of prompts for things to happen in the game, which I feel like interesting things happen in the game, which is the sort of the challenge of role-playing games at their core.
Yes, it encourages the players to be clever and to feel that they are. If there's humor, if there's intelligence, it comes from them rather than the game reacting to them, which is, a holy grail of good game design, which I think I may have achieved in Baron Munchausen, but we'll come on to that soon. Just from reading it, you get the spark of, as I said, I think there's a lot of mechanics in there governing a lot of things, but they are pushing everything in direction to encourage this, not just relying on the mechanics to do stuff for you, but to come up with clever reasons and clever thinking around that to make stuff happen within the narrative that then fire off the mechanics and cause the mechanical effects. It's elegant.
Thank you. I was aiming for elegant. And I mean, part of this, I feel like I think I've got a good balance in Unknown Armies. I've been more and more thinking of GM'd games. You have sort of a three-sided situation, and the three sides are the players, the GM, and the dice. And that, you fall back on the dice when you want something to get chaotic. And Unknown Armies permits you to get pretty chaotic, but the chaos is bounded. And that, things will get very chaotic if you're not doing the thing you're really obsessed with or something you're good at. But still, sometimes, even if you suck, you will still occasionally just pull off that half-court shot just out of random luck because percentage rolls are swingy, which people think they don't like that, but when it pans out for them, they love it.
Yeah, so true. And then, of course, the other system is the avatar system, where the avatars. So,
all right. So, should I try and do a nutshell Unknown Armies cosmology? All right. Mm-hmm. So, the universe gets created, and there are people in it, because people are the most important thing in the universe in Unknown Armies. Eventually, people develop enough that social roles appear. When enough people believe in something like the true king, or the mother is usually an early one, or the dispenser of justice, or the hunter in the wilderness, once enough people have that abstract idea in their mind, the individual person who best embodies it leaves material reality, enters a higher state where probability is made manifest, and from there, they contribute to the governing of the world. They influence events, not on an individual scale. They are now too large to even perceive most individuals, but they can change likelihoods, cause coincidences, and shape the world. These are the secret masters, the invisible clergy. At first, there's only a few of them, but as society gets more and more evolved, more and different archetypes ascend and take on this role in this sort of cosmic court. So you get the fool, you get the businessman, you get the demagogue, you get the firebrand, all kinds of different people. You get the inventor. And there's, Unknown Armies has loads and loads of these. The people back in material reality who act out these roles have things go their way. Circumstances tend to break in their favor. And the closer they get to their archetype, the more wild the coincidences become, or the more overtly unnatural the effects they can cause by drawing on their archetype become. One of the archetypes is the flying woman, the liberated woman who exists outside the boundaries set for her by men and traditional masculinity. And if you get your score high enough in Avatar, the flying woman, you can literally fly. You can literally fly like Supergirl. But you have to be really close to the archetype to get that. Most people never get that close. When there are 333 archetypes, the universe is destroyed. The archetypes all fuse into a single entity, which recreates the cosmos, dying in the process, and the whole system starts again. This means that if you put positive, loving people in as archetypes, or make sure positive archetypes ascend, that it's the healer that's up there instead of the warmonger, the next cosmos could be a better place than this one. But if you allow the world's mind to be occupied with roles that are cruel and oppressive, the next generation of the next edition of the cosmos could be much worse. And every bad thing that happens, all the oppression and injustice of the world, all the crime and cruelty and viciousness, is because it's a reflection of someone who was in the invisible clergy during the last session. Mm-hmm. So once you find out about this cosmology, a lot of times, the game is, all right, I am going to replace the warmonger with the peacekeeper, or I am going to replace the true king with the true executive, or I am going to replace, X old retrograde archetype with something new and better. And that can be a really exciting, fun, creativity driving objective for players. Okay, did I cover everything?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the invisible clergy cosmology is like what drives a lot of the movers and shakers in the setting, in terms of like, if you want to run a campaign where the player characters are dealing with factions like the New Inquisition or Max Attack or the Sleepers or any number of these written up entities, the invisible clergy comes in. That's like the end game of all the secret conspiracies and cults. Like that's the goal is to remake reality in their image. But that's like
my most recent Unknown Armies novel deals in part with the question of someone who's like, no. The necessary servant is a corrupted archetype. We need to replace it with the servant of integrity who will, do what it takes instead of just doing what they're told. And there's a lot of debate about, I'm not sure you always get good outcomes when people just follow what they think is the best thing to do instead of following orders.
Player characters can walk a path of the avatar, which means they get an avatar skill.
An identity, yes.
Yeah, an identity, which is given a percentage ability. And then, unlike adepts, they don't need to worry about charges. They just, when your ability is at a certain level, you can activate a certain ability. Like the Explorer avatar, up from 1, if you have at least 1% and up to 50%, as soon as you have it, you can, as long as you're seeking something, you don't have to worry about things like thirst and hunger. You can ignore them. You can ignore sunburn and frostbite and cuts from songs as long as you're seeking something, not going to the movies, but you're looking for something hidden. As one example, and like the survivor archetype, guess what? Their abilities help them survive things, and so it's one interesting quirk is also that avatars do not need to be aware of this cosmology at all. Or that they are avatars. They can just be doing what they're doing so intently that they are walking the path of the avatar unconsciously.
But it's very hard to really rack up the high numbers unless you're doing it on purpose. Avatars also have taboos. And so if you break your taboo as an avatar, you just lose points off the identity. I'm trying to think of a good example.
I'm looking at the avatar of the Explorer right now. The taboo is they must find something new to them each day. It can be information, place, or a new person. They must not have encountered it before. The flip side is the avatar must never create any cultural artifacts of her own. Whatever discoveries to be made, it must be natural or created by someone else. No faking it. So, technically surfing the internet probably surfing the internet would not count.
I'm not sure trivia quite fits the description.
Yeah.
But maybe a Wikipedia deep dive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get very far if you're just doing that, though. So, I know in Caleb's campaign, there was an avatar of the True King that was running a furniture store and had as their kingdom. And so they had an entire crew that were working for them, and they were treated as a king. They had a very nice round table in the furniture store. And we couldn't get, when we were getting close to their turf, we were cordially invited to the court, to Camelot Furniture or something like that.
Nice.
So yeah, cool. One thing I've seen on the internet and one discussion of it was a campaign framework of treating every character on The Simpsons as one of the 333 avatars. So like,
oh, good Lord.
Yeah,
wow.
And not just the major characters, but the minor ones. The one of Principal Skinner and Mo Sizlak and so on and so forth, because they do behave in certain ways that could be construed as a kind of avatar. So avatar, Mr. Burns,
the vulture capitalist. He even looks like a vulture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of great ideas from that. Very, very prompts for player actions. And it's a different style, and of course these magic systems are optional for player characters. You can just play. There's technically a third system where your identity can have a supernatural component to it. You can be a psychic, or a palm reader, or
I see dead people,
literal death touch, or a death touch. The dim mock, and you can kill people with your hands.
Eventually, yes.
So a very, very versatile system. I think we're kind of into how people play it at this point.
Yes. Well, I think we touched on how people play it with the campaign versus one shot, and
that's true,
and how it can handle both. I obviously I am deeply biased, but I think it plays better as a campaign. But I kind of tend to like everything better as a campaign.
Yeah. I tend to do more one shots just because I have so many games I want to try out. I can't commit. I'm just always
because you're promiscuous.
Yes, the grass is greener on the other side.
I've seen you looking at her invisible sun, you little slut.
I do want to talk about one thing about Unknown Armies that I found fascinating is how it has permeated tabletop gaming culture in a way that other games haven't. And like once you've read Unknown Armies, how it kind of changes you a little bit, at least. So one of the first exposures I had to Unknown Armies was this thread on rpg.net called "Make Up Your Own Unknown Army Style Rumors."
Oh, that was a great thread.
Yeah,
that was a winner.
With hundreds of pages long, and it was just people throwing out one sentence urban legend style rumors about Unknown Armies, and every single one of them could have been integrated.
There were some duds in there, but for the most part, there was a lot of gold.
Yeah. So here it is. It started in 2008. There's a place somewhere in the American highways where all motel owners vacation. The people you see on the Jerry Springer show are actually bred specifically to appear on the show. You remember the 80s? No, you didn't. It never happened. Do you really believe the entire country would embrace leg warmers, mullets, Ronald Reagan, and the sweet sound of the sine wave? All of it was created and sloppily. And the thing that and I've started seeing this more recently, is people like saying, "Oh man, this is some Unknown Army shit." This is like just referring to weird news. Whatever. Like Florida Man is an avatar,
absolutely,
or is someone trying to become an avatar. That is
or is an unnatural creature.
Is an unnatural creature. And
when I picture Florida Man, I see a Bigfoot in a high vis vest.
Yeah. There's a lot of Unknown Army. Like I've seen people talking about this is some Unknown Army shit. We're talking about current news, just the unreality of it.
It is always disturbing to me when Unknown Armies stuff gets real. You know about Fly to Heaven, right?
No.
Oh my God! So, Fly to Heaven was a scenario I wrote in 1997. The date is important.
Whoa.
And the premise is someone attempts to hijack a jetliner and fly it into a building to ascend as the terrorist. So, predicted 9/11 in Unknown Armies. Also, there was another thing I wrote in one of the books that had consensual erotic cannibalism a few years before Armin Meiwes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the taboo of the demagogue archetype is you can never admit that you were wrong. And when I saw a reporter ask Donald Trump, what would you have done differently in your first year in office? And he just said, I didn't make any mistakes. I'm like, shit, they just tried to taboo him.
Yeah.
So it is a better reflection of reality than we ever could have predicted it would be. I mean, John and I did not go into this planning that we were going to give people a new way to understand their lives and experiences. God, no, we just wanted to make something cool and fun. And yet, more than one person has said, Unknown Armies is a way that helps me organize my experiences. I'm like, really? You poor bastard. But
I think, I do want to mention, I don't know if we've we talked about it. This is a human-centric game. You mentioned unnatural creatures. It should be noted that there are no every monster in Unknown Armies. There are demons, but demons are dead people. They're ghosts, a type of ghost, essentially. There are no like non-human entities that were. If they were non-human, they used to be human. They begin. Yeah.
Well, everything's either ex-human or a twisted reflection of humans, or arose from human passion and intensity.
Yeah, there are tulpas. That is a thing that has come up in at least the games that I've played in. But yeah, there's no no Cthulhu, no aliens.
There's never anything you won't be able to figure out eventually if you keep picking at it. And one of the things I tried to do with the unnatural entities in 3rd edition is in the write-ups, there is always, I tried to always include a section on how do I exploit this for my own gain? And, it's like, oh yeah, well, here, everybody in the underground knows that if you can capture a trash golem and take it apart, then, you can use its feet to do thus and such. Or, everybody knows that if you get this particular kind of ghost and you throw salt on it, that it has to tell you a question.
Yeah.
So I tried to make it, and again, I think this is a little bit of the you're playing the cultist now element, is that you get access to these weird cheats as payment for not being a normal person.
The kind of flip side, though, is weirdly enough, I don't think Unknown Armies is necessarily the best fit for creepypasta / SCP style horror games. Like the latest thing right now is the Backrooms, which is a liminal horror meme / creepypasta that's been going around. And about you just wind up in some place with fluorescent lighting, looks kind of like a hotel corridor, but just goes on infinitely. And there's some weird monster chasing you. And that could easily be an Unknown Armies thing, but
sounds like another space.
Yeah, but like these creepypastas and the SCP always relies on inhuman things that are never explained at all and are not, very specifically not human.
Right.
And so you have to keep that you did it, humans are behind everything. Because I know when I've been thinking of an army scenario, I've run so much Delta Green, like, and then there's a little Cthulhu. No, wait, can't have a Cthulhu in it. Can't have it. No Shagas. So, that is something to keep in mind. So it's not for every type of horror game. It is not perfect for every type of story. It is,
though. It's interesting you mention SCP because I've been thinking about what if I were to run Unknown Armies. I wouldn't run it straight out the box. I'd keep all of the mechanics, but I'd change the background. And what I'd probably try and do with it is something like the novel Ra by QNTM. I don't know if you've come across QNTM.
I have not.
I believe a self-published British science fiction author, best known for the novel There Is No Anti-Memetics Division, which is an SCP novel, and which is startlingly good. And I recommend all their work very highly. But There Is No Anti-Memetics Division is a lot of fun. But Ra is set in our world, in which magic is discovered in, I believe, 1972. The first spell is cast in 1972. And so magic is industrialized very quickly and becomes an academic research. And it's not as simple as that. It's absolutely not. There's backstories and backstories, and it's great. It's an absolute romp, and it's also very cheap on. I think you can only get them as ebooks on Google Play. Well worth $1.50 or whatever it is of your time.
It's on the Kindle store too. But yeah.
I just want tangible books that I can leave in the bathroom for when I'm in there. Come on, people.
I agree completely. Reading this stuff on my phone was not the optimum. I ended up reading it as I was walking the dog and stuff like that. It's quite. They have
I'm trying to declutter because I'm like, give me all the ebooks. I have too many books as it is.
But the point is, there's Ra is about modern magic. There Is No Anti-Memetics Division is set very specifically in the SCP universe. But there's a notable crossover between the two. And I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with here, but I think one could take Unknown Armies and do something slightly different with it. Ra is a very human story, though different types of humans. But then so is Unknown Armies, sort of, ascended humans and all the rest of it. I think one could wonk Unknown Armies and do something similarly human and also similarly horrific, but not with Greg's original background. I think it's versatile enough. I think the core concepts underlying it can be transmuted.
To be fair, it's much more John's original concept. He came up with the invisible clergy and all that. I cannot take credit. I expanded on it and kind of tidied it in a lot of ways. But yeah. Okay. The genesis is John.
I mean, that's fair.
Boy, that sounds biblical.
One can just imagine him going, "And of this tree thou shalt not thou shalt definitely not eat."
So I mean, that's the thing, is you can easily run an Unknown Armies game and ignore the entire cosmology of it and just do a ghost story or, a slasher or anything you can really imagine. I mean,
it would probably work pretty well for Money Heist. Mm-hmm. You could probably just do it as a crime story.
Yeah. You could do it. Yeah, an entirely mundane game too. So it's a very versatile modern system, and it's very there's a lot of really cool things about it, and it's worth. We haven't even mentioned the book's design for 3rd edition, which is great. The PDFs are actually really excellent too, because there's like embedded links to take shortcuts to take you everywhere. I appreciated that. And
that's Thomas Deeney. He did from jump, before the books were even finished, he was planning out how the PDFs were gonna link together. Yeah. So
it's
if you're looking for a layout guy, Thomas Deeney's a good one.
I'll keep that in mind. It's a really cool game, and
so many good layout guys who are too expensive for me to afford now.
Layout people. Yeah,
it's the tragedy.
Yeah.
Yes. We haven't even mentioned the photography yet. Pretty much all the art is, or a great percentage of the art is photographic, which gives it a really unique feel. Yeah, not least because it's good photography. There have been, what was that vampire knockoff or the World of Darkness knockoff that came out late 90s, early 2000s?
Oh, I think I know the one you're talking about.
Immortal?
That sounds right.
Yeah, which was all treated, stuff that had been run through a Photoshop filter and did not look very good.
It didn't. But at the time, it was okay, but it didn't age well. That's for sure.
No, definitely not.
There was an edition of Cyberpunk that used old school style G.I. Joe figures posed as with custom things.
I missed that one. Wow.
Yeah. Maybe it was CyberGen, but it was definitely one of the
you can't see it because this is a podcast, but I'm just sitting here staring into the distance with my jaw slack.
Yeah, that seems like a very, very odd choice.
Well, it's a bold choice. You're not wrong about it being. Wow. I think Vampire 5th. It's not exclusively photos, but they use a lot of photos. Yeah. So it's it, and I think part of it is that tech's catching up, and it's easier to do quality photos at a price that's not completely out of reach. So, but I did want it to have the main thing I wanted, the main inspiration for the look of Unknown Armies 3rd edition was Post-Secret. Are you familiar with this? Oh, it's this art project where this guy set up this thing where it's like, send me a postcard with your secret on it. And thousands and thousands of people have, and the postcards generally are decorated in some way. And a lot of it is photo collage or just sort of graffiti style scrawls. And they're very evocative. And he's done a couple art books. Some of them are very funny. Some of them are heartbreakingly tragic. to me, the archetypal one is the text of it is just, I found my dad's secret porn folder. Turns out he has a fetish. And the image is just a milk carton. So it's post-secret will take you places.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've broken Ross. Oops.
Yeah. So I think that's. I mean, we covered so much. I mean, there's still so much to cover. Yeah. We could go on. We could do a whole series just on unknown armies. But I mean, I feel like we have to end at some point.
At some point.
Yeah, I'm tired. It's been a hell of a week.
Oh yeah, you're hours and hours later than the rest of us. It's been
it's 11 o'clock at night. Yeah.
Oh, we gotta let James get to bed.
Yeah.
But
so thank you all so much for, of course, those of you back to Kickstarter. Thank you
for
everyone who's listening to this. And our next episode will be about the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, the game.
The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Sorry, corrected. Yes, the Extraordinary.
The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is the Terry Gilliam movie, and I can get into trouble for that.
Not to be confused with the quotidian adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Now,
I'm looking forward to it, and it'll be a lot less homework than this one was. But,
It is shorter, yes.
Fred Schwert. Thank you, Fred Schwert, for your support and backing.
And thank you, Jeremy, for supporting the Kickstarter.
And Shelby. That's all the information I have, but our gratitude is enormous nonetheless. Thank you for supporting us.
All right.
And we'll talk to you all next time. Bye.
Woo woo. Bye.
Bye.